Cool.
So thank you. I want you to answer my questions like, how do you want to answer? Like, be free. If you don't want to answer, that's okay. I will
Okay.
I will be asking you just a few questions. It's not much, okay?
Okay. Cool.
So, first, please tell me your name and what do you do?
My name is Lara Minicello, and I work as an esthetician. I specialize in dermatillomania treatment within my practice. I also am a body worker, and have been doing that for almost 20 years. So, yeah.
Okay. And what is your story with skin picking and dermatillomania? How do you got to know it, and what is your story with
Yeah.
it?
Yeah. So, excuse me. Um, I started picking at my skin probably like late teens, early 20s. I'm 41 now, so that was a long time ago. Um, and it came out of actually, like, my sister, just one day we were talking about makeup and, like, cleaning our skin or whatever, and she mentioned that she was, like, squeezing stuff out of her pores, and I remember that being really interesting and, like, I'd never done it, so next time I washed my face, I was like, "Oh, like, yeah, there's stuff in there." And it just kind of became this, I don't wanna say all-consuming, but, like, very consuming habit. And around 19 is also the time that I experienced a sexual assault, and so I think, like, the 2 just sort of found each other. Like, I was dealing with a lot of unaddressed anxiety and trauma, and then, like, I started doing this, and I noticed, like, it was very soothing and super calming, and, like, hours would go by when I was in the bathroom, like, picking
Mhm.
at my skin. So I think it, like, they just sort of met each other at a time where that became a coping mechanism for me a little bit. And I struggled with it probably until my mid to late 20s.
Mhm.
I didn't know it was even a thing. It took me a long time to learn that it was. And in retrospect, I don't even know that I knew it was an actual disorder until after it had sort of resolved a bit for myself. And then I got really interested in it. And then I went to school for skin care studies in 2014, 13. And it just kind of got driven home at that time. We didn't learn a lot about it in school at all, actually, and um, it kind of infuriated me that we didn't, that like it wasn't being talked about. And I saw fellow students who clearly had issues with skin picking. It wasn't being talked about. The teachers, I don't even remember it honestly being studied at all. It may have been mentioned like once or twice, but so all of that sort of had me revisit my own experience with it. And then when I started doing skincare professionally, I started seeing clients who just would talk about it and expressed how much shame and dismissal they encountered when they tried to talk to estheticians or dermatologists or doctors. And it sort of just drove home this whole thing full circle for me. And I decided I really wanted to specialize in this within my skincare work. So that's my sort of long-winded story about my own experience and how I kind of arrived where I'm at with it now.
Oh, that's very, very great.
Yeah.
And as you mentioned before, like at a point of your life, you didn't even knew that this was a thing. That happened with me too, because
Yeah.
I suffer with skin picking too, and it took me a long time for me to realize it was a disorder. I think I was like 17, 18 when I found out, and now I'm 20. So like only 3 years before now, I knew what was going on with me. And why do you think this type of behavior is not very discussed and it's not seen as a mental health problem? Why do you think that?
Yeah, I wish I had an answer for that. I don't really know why it's so understudied, why it's so under reported, I think is a big issue. I think there's so much shame with it,
Mhm.
and such a lack of understanding about the issue that people don't mention it. They don't mention it to their doctors for sure. They don't mention it to even therapists that all the time. I have a lot of massage clients I've worked with over the years who like just in conversation have shared that they, oh, my son picks compulsively at his fingernails, or I do that, or like when I start picking at my skin I can't stop. Like, so I think it's wildly underreported, and I think the numbers are probably really skewed as far as how many people actually suffer with it. So I don't know exactly why it's so neglected in mental health care and even in the skincare industry. Perhaps it's partly underreporting so that there's not as much, there's not a large voice that's informing, the focus for research and all that stuff. They just maybe don't realize it's as big of an issue as it is at this point. I really wish I had a good answer for that, but I would imagine the only thing I can speak to is that I would imagine that the shame component and the fact that so many people don't know it's a problem, think they're the only one who does this, and the shame of not being able to disclose that to people in professional fields. I think that's probably a big piece of it, but yeah.
And like, did you feel ashamed about your scars throughout your life?
Yeah, so I it's a weird thing to talk about because I feel a bit privileged that I have always had really good skin. Like my skin always recovered really well from skin picking. And there were only a few occasions where I like picked to the point that I probably could have created a scar. I didn't struggle with going like that far down the rabbit hole of picking. Like I would get obsessed with just cleaning out my pores, or like if there was an ingrown hair somewhere, I might pick at it, like kind of go after it. And those were probably the times that I did maybe scar, was like trying to get an ingrown hair out. Um, so I did. I didn't struggle so much with the scarring because my skin healed really well. So people wouldn't have been tipped off to it because there was like I just don't, my skin handled it pretty well. I would say though that, and I don't want to jump ahead if this is like a different question to answer, but I would say that being sort of like caught in the act of picking was super shameful and difficult. Like having boyfriends where like, I'd be in the bathroom and like didn't plan to, but just like started picking, and then 45 minutes has gone by and they're like, "Are you okay? Like, what's going on?" Like, I never let anybody witness that, but I think there are people in my life who probably figured it out a little bit, and that felt very, very shameful. Um, Most of the scarring that came out of that activity probably wasn't very obvious to anyone but myself. Because it would be like picking at an ingrown hair in my bikini line or somewhere where like it just wasn't as visible on my face.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's not something I feel like I personally can speak to as well, but my heart breaks for people who are dealing with that level of skin picking, because I know it's just like it's hard enough when you're doing this behavior in secrecy and shame and isolation, but then you can like walk out the door and nobody knows. It's very different when you're dealing with that level of scarring, and then you're kind of you're just it's put out there. You can't hide it as much. So that creates a whole different level of struggle for people, I feel like. Yeah.
And what would you say to people when they say, like, when you tell your story, when someone with skin picking tells their story and talk about how they pick and they say stop picking?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sorry, what did you say?
What would you say to these people? Like,
The
what would
people who are saying to stop
yeah.
picking?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's like That's kind of a loaded question. It's not a bad question, but there's so many layers to that, because I feel like um, there's a piece of education that has to happen. Like I feel like people can't sort of soften those judgments or statements, which I think the majority of the time are coming from a place of love and concern, and people don't understand it, so they just want you to stop. And it's I think at the core, that's the majority of why those comments get made. It's really hard to change that reaction from people unless they're really educated as to what this is about, right? So this goes back to like the question you asked earlier of why is there not more stuff addressing this. Like there's not a lot of information that's public or common knowledge about this disorder. So I think my the best way I would advise people to respond to that is a combination of boundaries of like what's okay for other people commenting on about you and your appearance or your choices. The other piece though is that if you can intertwine that with education, I feel like that's your like 1-2 punch to really get people to understand and kind of back off. So the more educated someone is about the disorder, about the fact that it's not, you know, it can fall on the spectrum of a OCD kind of behavior. So um, I think when as individuals who struggle with skin picking, if we can find the internal like sense of confidence to have boundaries around what we want to be discussed or talked about, and educate ourselves so that we can respond to people and say, hey, would you like to learn about this disorder? Like, can I send you some information about it? And like gently incorporating that with like, and I really, that's not helpful for me to hear that. What would be helpful, and I think that's the other piece, is really giving people something positive as well. Like what would be helpful is either, I don't know, never asking at all, or, you know, asking me what this feels like for me,
Mm.
or asking me if I've noticed connections between thoughts or things going on in my world when this happens. Like, so I think there's a group of skill sets that are really helpful in addressing that. I just, in my experience with clients, I don't see many people having those skill sets yet. So it's something that like takes a little time, and I think resourcing yourself to know how to respond to that. And I think, you know, and there's so many layers beyond that of, you know, when you're dealing with families in particular, that seems to be where I hear this comes out the most, is like moms to daughters, or like parents to kids, or siblings. Like sometimes it's a partner, right? Like a romantic partner who you live with or whatnot. But the majority of the times I hear about it, where it's the most distressing, is from parents to kids,
Yeah.
to their children, even adult children. Um, and I think then you get into layers of dealing with, you know, family systems and self-image within families. You know, there's all of that sort of sticky uh enmeshment and things that happen in families where one person has a like bad or disturbing behavior or addiction or whatever it is, and they can sort of become the scapegoat for all of the family's dysfunction, for all of like the stuff the family doesn't want to acknowledge. So that shows up too sometimes, where like
Mm.
the person with the skin picking disorder or behaviors is sort of being a little bit scapegoated of being kind of like a problem or a bad reflection within of the family. So sometimes I think too, like understanding those dynamics can be helpful, but that's kind of going into the deep end of that pool, like
Mhm.
getting into more of the psychology, family systems, and sort of the like identified patient roles, which often people who struggle with addiction or OCD are in those roles in families. But yeah, that's why I said like that's a very loaded thing that happens with families around this issue. So does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah, that makes sense because like most of my story like with skin picking, why I feel like ashamed towards that, it's the way like my family dealt with that. because especially my mom, like I don't remember any time like my family asking me why you do that. They only
Mhm.
would reprehend me or cut my nails really short to not like pick. And now like I'm doing therapy and we are trying to get like to the basis of that, and it's really hard
Mhm.
because I do that since I was a child. Since I know myself as a person, I pick my skin. So
Yeah.
it's really hard, and my family like would all the time say like stop picking, like you have to control
Mhm.
yourself, you have to do this, you have to do that, you cannot. And if they see like me with my hands scratching or in the legs, oh my god, they start to scream or they
Mhm.
oh, stop. And
Yeah.
I totally get it, totally get it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a really big thing, and I wish, like, if I could impart any, like, the most important I feel like gift that I wish I could impart to people who are struggling with dermatillomania or their families or people that are concerned about them is understanding, like, I feel like a base starting place that's so helpful is to get people to see that there's actually like so much intelligence in this behavior. It seems so counterintuitive, like because everyone's like, oh, it's gross, it's bad, it's harming your skin. And like, okay, sure. That's true. You're probably causing some harm to your skin, whatever. But people are not, not that that's not a big deal, but like in getting people to stop, um, shame has been proven in research to be a really, pardon my French, like shitty motivator for change. People do not change when they're shamed. They just don't. They may like attempt to change behavior and like put a little bit of effort into it, but if the foundation of that motivation is shame, people do not change. They don't. It actually like they'll circle back to whatever they're ashamed about and it becomes like worse ultimately. So I feel like if I could impart one gift to people who are dealing with this and the people that love them is to understand that like and get really curious about there's so much intelligence in this behavior. Like it's kind of brilliant. Like this is a coping strategy. You have found yourself like you found as a child, as an adolescent, whenever it starts for people, that is providing you something of great benefit and getting curious about what that is. I feel like and approaching it from that place of like beginning to have some respect for the behavior, getting curious about it, and honoring the fact that like this has protected me. It's like protected my nervous system from overwhelm. I don't have the skills yet to handle. It's calmed me and soothed me when my attachment system is overly activated. It's provided a way for me to escape from a trauma experience or something I haven't fully integrated. So I feel like, and those are usually, not always, but those are usually the things that the themes you find around this behavior is a lot of trauma, a lot of attachment disorder or nervous system dysregulation. So really, if we could come in like a different door to this behavior and say, wow, like how amazing that you figured out a way to calm yourself, to soothe yourself when you haven't had the other skills to get there. That's amazing. How incredible. And like approaching it from that way. And then being like, okay, let's get curious about what this behavior is doing for you. You know? And so I feel like if people could get to that place within themselves and then help others around them have that curiosity, we'd make so much difference in this behavior. But yeah, typically how it's met professionally, within families, and within individuals is shame, self hatred, and this sort of like all or nothing mentality of, okay, tomorrow I'm never going to pick my skin again. Like there's just this kind of like it's black or white. I'm going to stop. I can't do it anymore. Kind of like people that cycle with dieting and food issues. And but the underlying factor is usually shame. And so people, I think it's one of the reasons this is such a hard disorder for people to
Mm.
overcome. But yeah, that would be like that. I think is a huge key to how to show up for yourself and how to encourage other people to show up for you is like curiosity. Like you said, no one's ever asked you,
Hmm.
why do you do this? Why do you feel this way? Why do you feel this need? Like, and that's fundamental to
Yeah.
working with it.
Okay, so kind of like linking this question with what you answered. Do you think that someday, like doctors and um, therapists and researchers, we will be able to find like something that approaches to a cure for picking, like for stopping this behavior?
Mm, I don't know about that. Like, I'm sure, I mean, maybe there will be better medications that work to balance, underlying mental health issues, because these are, skin picking is quite often comorbid with other mental health diagnoses, whether it's eating disorders or bipolar, other issues like that. So perhaps there'll be a fine tuning of medications that might make this easier. I don't know, and just like my sort of value system and how I look at clients, and what I've learned over the years doing body work and studying psychology is I don't know if there ever is like a cure for something that doesn't require dealing with the underlying trauma. Is like a big umbrella, and I understand that not everybody that has this issue has trauma. And this, I mean, like, we all have degrees of trauma, but when I say that, I don't even mean like what they call like big T trauma, like capital T trauma, like rape or incest or things like that. We all have like small T traumas, right? Like just attachment trauma, or whatever we've experienced throughout our lives. I don't know that any compulsive behavior can ultimately be cured without looking at those things. But that's just my sort of value and belief system around how we work as human animals. So yeah, I don't know. Like I would imagine perhaps there'll be medications that get better and better and help maybe make these things easier to work with. And maybe psychology will get better, and the dermatological industry will get better, and there'll be better tools to work with it. But I'm not sure if I think there'll be a cure for it. I think we're hardwired to self-soothe, like it's required for our survival. And whether you're on medications or not, that's a requirement of human like survival, is to be able to self-soothe and regulate. And skin picking is so fascinating because I mean there have been studies looking at the connections between primates and how monkeys and other animals, they groom each other, they like pick at each other, and it's a very deep and old sort of human impulse. And there's been studies that have shown that there are neurochemicals released that calm us down when we pick at our
Mm.
skin. So I think there's like deep evolutionary design for self-soothing, skin contact, touch. Those things are really important to human survival and development. And I think skin picking is a unique disorder, if we want to even call it that, like because it satisfies multiple levels of that need.
Yes.
Because even think about it, like you're touching yourself, like there can even be like so much satisfaction from it just because you're getting like skin contact, and you're getting that feeling of like um what's the word I'm looking for? It's not the word I was looking for, but I can't think of what it was. Just like you're getting that skin on skin, like soothing contact. It's not the same as being touched, but
Hmm.
um, it's a component of it. So
Yeah.
it's a really interesting disorder in that way.
And what would you say to your younger self?
Yeah, like my younger self, who when I was struggling with this.
Yes.
Yeah. Um, I think I would say to her what I'm trying so hard to say now to people, like, um, it's okay. Like, you're not broken. You're not alone, I think is a huge one. And yeah, I think I'd say what I told you I wish I could gift to everybody, which is I'd say this is like there's a brilliance here, like there's an intelligence here, and let's like get really curious about that. I think that's what I'd say. And it's like I think everything like on my Instagram page that I post, and like those are all the things I wish I had
Mhm.
heard, you know, when I was really struggling with this. And yeah, I feel like that's why I feel like what I'm doing now is partly what I wish would have been available to me. So
Like,
yeah.
thank you for your Instagram account, because I found a
Yeah.
community on Instagram that really helped me, because I developed a sense of shame because my picking happens the most on my legs. And it's been really hard, especially now that I'm becoming an adult and having so much different emotions that are new to me. And it's been really hard because they are showing more now. I don't know why,
Mhm.
but now my skin, it's not like the same as it used to be when I was a kid and a teenager. So it takes longer and my scars are more appearing. And
Mm.
like on Instagram, I found a community that says like, it's okay, don't be ashamed, you're still beautiful, you still worthy of love, and that's really important. So thank you for your Instagram.
Yeah. Oh, of course. I'm so happy to have it. And you know, the therapist that I work with on occasion, like when I came up with this idea actually years before I went to skincare school or aesthetic school. Um, and I remember thinking like, oh, well, am I qualified? Like, yes, I have a degree in psychology. I don't have a master's. I'm not a therapist. Like, but I've spent all of my study and working with, you know, massage clients for 20 years. I've worked with like literally thousands of people, and these kind of issues come up so often. And I remember saying to my therapist like, but am I qualified like to, and she was like, do you think you could have helped you at 18 now? And I'm like, oh my god, yeah, like I would have so much wisdom and insight. And she's like, there you go. So that's how I feel, is just like if my journey can be of support to others combined with like the skill sets I've accumulated and my background in skincare, I feel like I'm hoping, at least I feel hopeful that there's such good overlap of like also being a skincare professional. And so I understand like what's actually happening to the skin and how to work with people. And I think like I also have seen it working in the skincare industry. I've also seen people with dermatillomania really exploited a little bit, like not, I don't think knowingly exploited, but when I would see other estheticians work with clients who had skin picking, or clients came into like spas or whatever I was working at, you know, they own every skincare product you could imagine. And like after their facial, they'd be like, well, what do you think I should buy? Like, tell me what to buy and I'll buy it. And I just like, my heart broke because I'm like, this is such a vulnerable population. And um, we all want to desperately heal our skin and have it look great. So when a professional's like, oh, well, you need this, and this, and then I see these clients spending hundreds and hundreds of dollars on product they don't necessarily need. Um, yeah, I'm hopeful that my particular skill sets serve to like inspire and also like protect this community a little bit. Um, where people can just feel safe of like, oh, okay, like she doesn't have a weird agenda, you know, she really cares and understands. And the film that I'm putting together, I'm really hopeful that that will
Oh, I'm curious
be,
about that.
yeah, I decided just a few weeks ago, I was like, I do film work. It's like a side passion of mine, like film work and editing. It's a creative outlet for me. And this past 2 weeks, I was like, oh, I should like put together a short film about this. So I, on my Instagram, did kind of like an open call for anyone who wants to submit anything about their story about skin picking. So people have been sending like poetry and journal articles or journal entries and video and photographs they've taken. And so yeah, I'm gonna put together a short film over the next month or two talking about dermatillomania and sharing people's stories because of like what you're trying to do of just like there's not a lot out there. People feel really alone and isolated. And I have never seen anything done in film around this issue. So yeah, I'm putting together probably like a 15 or 20-minute short film with all the stuff that I get back from people. So
And when we can send it to you, like our recordings and photos, where we can send it.
yeah, you can send it. Have you and I exchanged actual emails, or we've just
No,
kind of
just
through
Instagram.
Instagram? Yeah, I'll email you my email. So if you
Okay.
or I think on my Instagram there's a email button that will also directly link you to my email, but I'll send you my email. So yeah, people are sending like audio recordings of talking about what this is like for them and all kinds of things. So if you want to contribute, I would absolutely love that. And everybody will be credited to the degree of anonymity or non-anonymity that they want. So it can be done totally anonymous. And of course, I'll credit you in whatever way you want. So
Okay, thank you so much.
yeah, yeah. I hope that's helpful.
Yes. Is there anything more you want to say about skin picking or about yourself?
No, I feel like I talked a lot, so I hope that there's like some good nuggets in there for you. But I think it's great that you're doing your paper on this and like, yeah, just the word needs to get out so people can stop being in
Yes.
isolation and shame around it. So it's huge.
Yeah, thank you. So
Yeah,
thank you so much for agreeing
of
to
course.
do this. I'm so content. You're so smart. You're so great.
Oh,
And
oh,
thank you for your job. You really help a lot of people, and people
oh.
like the world needs more people like you.
Oh, well, thank you so much. It makes me feel like little messages like that and thoughts and feedback just make me clear that I'm on the right path with doing this kind of work. So, yeah, of course. I'm so happy to offer a place of like feeling understood and less alone and like you're totally okay. Like you're totally okay. And just like hold on to that there's like beautiful intelligence in this behavior and you just need to like befriend that a little bit and get curious about it. That's really the key, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I will end this meeting now. Thank you so
Okay.
much.
Yeah, you're
Okay.
so welcome. Yeah.
Thank
Have a
you.
wonderful rest of your day and I'll look forward to seeing what evolves with this and everything else going on in your world. And whatever you feel like you want to submit for the video, just send it over.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay.
When I
You're so
end this project, I will send it to you, of course.
perfect. That sounds great. I'd look forward to seeing that.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Kisses.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Stay healthy and be well, please.
You too.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.